There are crimes that defy explanation. And then, there are crimes that defy the very laws of how a crime is supposed to work. Eleanor Voss had tended her greenhouse for 31 years. She knew every plant by name, every leaf by shape, every bloom by the exact day it would open. On the night of March 3rd, Eleanor went into her greenhouse at 9 p.m. as she did every evening. She was found at 7 a.m. the following morning, seated at her workbench, her notebook open, her evening tea half finished beside her, and the door, the single door into the greenhouse, bolted from the inside. Every pane of glass intact. No broken panels, no gaps, no tunnels, no trapdoors. Eleanor Voss had died in a room made entirely of glass, and nobody could explain how the killer had gotten in or out. Ryan Cole took the initial call at 6:58 a.m. He called Mysteria immediately. "Greenhouse," he said. "Glass. Locked from inside. No way in, no way out." "I'll be there in 20 minutes," she said. She was there in 14. She stood at the greenhouse entrance and looked at the door for a long moment before Ryan touched the handle. "Don't," she said. She crouched at the door frame. She looked at the bolt mechanism from the outside. Then she took out her torch, and she saw it. Faint, almost invisible, but there. Scratch marks on the inside face of the bolt housing. Not on the bolt itself, on the housing around it. The kind of marks left by fingers trying to grip something that would not move. Eleanor Voss had not locked that door from the inside. She had tried to open it from the inside. And something had stopped her. "This wasn't a locked room," Mysteria said quietly. "What was it?" Ryan asked. "A trap," she said. "Someone locked her in." Eleanor Voss was 66 years old, a celebrated botanist, 40 years of published research, the holder of 17 plant patents. A woman whose work on medicinal plant compounds had contributed to treatments used by millions of people worldwide. She lived alone on a 12-acre private estate outside the city. 3 people had legitimate access to her estate in the weeks before her death. Petra Cole, Eleanor's personal assistant, 27 years old, had worked for Eleanor for 3 years and had access to the estate's smart home system for routine management. Dr. Sylvia Marsh, Eleanor's research partner of 20 years, 61 years old, had visited the estate 3 weeks ago, the last visitor recorded in Eleanor's security log before her death. And Martin Voss, Eleanor's nephew, 38 years old, her only living family member who stood to inherit the estate under her existing will. Mysteria stood in the center of the greenhouse and turned slowly. The plants surrounded her on every side, hundreds of them, meticulously organized, labeled, maintained. She stopped turning. She looked at 3 plants on the bench to her left. Then she crouched beside them. "These," she said. "These are not Eleanor's." The plant identification database returned results in 4 minutes. Nepenthes obscura, a rare pitcher plant species, not native to this climate, not part of Eleanor's documented collection, a species that produces significantly elevated levels of carbon dioxide during its nighttime respiration cycle, far beyond the output of standard greenhouse plants. In a sealed, unventilated greenhouse overnight, 3 of them combined with a disabled ventilation system and 1 additional factor would create an atmosphere that a sleeping person would never wake from. The ventilation system had been switched off remotely at 11:50 p.m. The estate's smart home log showed the command issued from an external device using valid credentials. Someone who had been given those credentials and never had them revoked. Forensic testing confirmed a mild sedative compound in the remaining tea, naturally derived. plant-based, a valerian extract in a concentration that would induce deep sleep within 40 minutes of consumption. Eleanor had drunk half her tea at approximately 9:30 p.m. She would have been deeply asleep by 10:15. She would have had no awareness of the ventilation switching off at midnight, no awareness of the CO2 levels building through the early hours, no awareness of anything until approximately 3 a.m. when the levels reached a point that penetrated even deep sleep and caused her to wake in distress. At 4:17 a.m., Eleanor's phone showed one outgoing message, sent to Dr. Sylvia Marsh. Cannot breathe properly. Something wrong. Please, come. Sylvia Marsh's phone had been switched off at 10 p.m. and not switched back on until 6:45 a.m., 43 minutes after Eleanor was estimated to have died. She switched her phone off before Eleanor fell asleep, so there would be no record of her receiving the message, and switched it back on after Eleanor was already gone. Mysteria picked up Eleanor's notebook. The last entry, written at approximately 4 a.m., the handwriting uneven and labored, contained 3 words: Sylvia, the Nepenthes. Eleanor had figured it out. In the final hours of her life, struggling to breathe, unable to open the door, waiting for help that was never coming, she had looked at those 3 plants and understood. She had known, and had not had enough time or air to do anything about it. Dr. Sylvia Marsh had filed a parallel patent application 4 months ago through a private patent attorney. Using research data that was unmistakably Eleanor's, compounds developed in Eleanor's laboratory, documented in Eleanor's research logs, the result of Eleanor's 40 years of work, filed under Sylvia's name alone. Eleanor's final patent application, the one due in 4 days, covered the same compound, filed legitimately, with full documentation. If Eleanor's application was filed, Sylvia's parallel application would be immediately invalidated. Eleanor would own the compound. Sylvia would face exposure for research theft. If Eleanor did not file in time, Sylvia's application, already 4 months ahead, would be approved first. The compound was valued by pharmaceutical analysts at between 40 and 60 million. She visited 3 weeks ago and planted the Nepenthes at the ventilation intake point. She used Eleanor's smart home credentials, given 11 years ago and never revoked, to disable the ventilation remotely at midnight. She introduced a valerian extract into Eleanor's evening tea before she went into the greenhouse. And she sealed the door from outside using a magnetic locking device attached to the exterior bolt housing, recovered later from a gap in the garden wall 12 meters from the greenhouse entrance. 3 separate mechanisms, all working together, all invisible individually, all pointing to one person. Dr. Sylvia Marsh was at her university office when Mysteria and Ryan arrived. She looked up with the composed expression of someone who had decided that composure was her best defense. "I heard about Eleanor," she said. "Terrible." "You heard about it this morning," Mysteria said, "when you switched your phone back on." She placed 3 items on the desk one by one. A photograph of the Nepenthes plants, the smart home access lock, the magnetic locking device in an evidence bag. You replaced 3 plants, disabled the ventilation, sealed the door, introduced a sedative into her tea, and filed a patent application using 40 years of her research. Sylvia's composure held for a long moment. Then, something underneath it shifted. 20 years, she said. I gave 20 years to that research. I was in that greenhouse every week. Every result she published had my work in it. My name was never first, never lead, always secondary, always her. Then you should have filed jointly, Mysteria said. Instead, you waited until she was 4 days from filing legitimately, and you killed her. Sylvia looked at the desk and said nothing more. Dr. Sylvia Marsh was arrested and charged. The magnetic locking device carried her fingerprints. The smart home access log showed her credentials used from her home device. The Nepenthes plants were traced to her university research collection, where 3 specimens were found missing from the inventory. Eleanor's legitimate patent application was filed posthumously by her legal team 4 days after her death, exactly on schedule, and approved. Sylvia's parallel application was invalidated immediately. The scratch marks on the bolt housing had been noticed first by Petra Cole, not Mysteria. Petra had seen them when she first tried to open the door that morning and had thought they looked wrong. She had mentioned it to the first officer on scene, who had noted it in the log as a minor detail. Mysteria had read that log in the car on the way over. Ryan looked at her when she told him. You spotted it in a log entry written by a junior officer as a minor detail. Petra spotted it first, Mysteria said. I just knew what it meant. She looked out the window. Good assistants notice everything, she said. Eleanor knew that. It is one of the reasons she kept Petra close. Ryan was quiet for a moment. Eleanor wrote 3 words in her final moments, he said. She always knew. She always knew, Mysteria said. She just ran out of time to prove it. She picked up her coffee. We had enough time, she said. That is what matters. Eleanor Voss spent 31 years building a greenhouse full of living things. She knew every plant by name. In the end, it was the plants she didn't know that told Mysteria everything. 3 specimens, wrong species, wrong position, wrong person. A locked room that was never locked from the inside. And 3 words written in the dark by a woman who understood, even then, that the truth was worth writing down. Agent Mysteria, Case 11, closed.